Hi everyone, my name is Missy Hiltner. I chose to use this power drill as the item to center as the theme of my economic story. This is the first tool that my dad taught me how to use in our work together. And I'm going to use it to show how, through my parents' small construction business in a middle class university town, I was shaped to believe that the value a person brought to the community around them was based on their ability to work hard and create functional benefits for others. So, some of the decisive physical characteristics of my story include that I grew up in East Lansing, Michigan, which is the home of Michigan State University. The university drew students from all over the globe, which meant that my environment, even though right in the middle of the Midwest, was incredibly diverse. The best and brightest came to East Lansing from all over the world to achieve academic success. And so I learned intrinsically that education was foundational to economic success in our world. And I grew up assuming that my sisters and I would all be expected to attend and graduate from college, no matter how much that cost. Michigan State University is also known for its roots as an agricultural college, and that means that even as a Big Ten school, its vibe was a celebration of production and resources. Unlike some of the rival state schools around us, known for providing a more liberal education, MSU was known for training students to be farmers, entrepreneurs, and packaging engineers. I attended grade school, with the children of professors and professionals, and the standard of living among my peers was that families mostly lived in homes that were owned by the family. I don't recall many of my friends even needing to share a room with their siblings. Michigan is known for having all four seasons and unpredictable weather, and that meant that successful people found ways to make money year-round. This happened over generations, but if a person was a professional landscaper, they would also need to work as a snowplow during the winter. While industry slowed during the winter in some sectors, the overall economy in Michigan was historically based on indoor industry, like factory production. So I actually currently live in Detroit, which is a city that once totally shaped the economic fabric of the state with its development of automobile production. So as far as family, social, national, ethnic, political, racial, ableist, and gender factors, my parents chose to provide for our family with a small business designing and installing closet shelving systems. So as a young teenager, I started working with my dad installing closets, hence the power drill. My parents' partnership in business and the way that they empowered me to work with them in any capacity kind of protected me from gender stereotypes that I would later learn are culturally normal. So in my world, it didn't matter if you were a boy or a girl. You could make money and provide for yourself just by making yourself available to work and by working hard. When it comes to ableist tendencies, however, I learned an implicit bias that to contribute valuably, you had to have some physical ability, strength, or skill in order to be successful. And being white and middle class with grandparents living locally, helping to care for us, and a supportive and affluent extended family, I didn't understand until much later in life that I was benefiting from social structures that favored white people above ethnic minorities. And I can see now that both of my parents' families raised in the Detroit area were afforded housing, for example, that wouldn't have been available to Black people in the 1960s and 70s. Even though my parents themselves struggled financially at times, our family, who'd benefited over the decades from racist policies, were always at the ready to help us, it's an advantage I know now has not been afforded to a lot of people of color. So as far as technologies and how they play a role in how I view the world economically, in my experience growing up in a family that worked in the trades, the best technologies were the ones that could make us the most productive. So again, the power drill is a form of technology that my parents could not have functioned without. I learned how to use it at age 12. And I learned that having more than one was the way to make us extra efficient. So I've grown up to view technology as a way to amplify human strength and ability. Technology, in my understanding, literally gives us tools to do our jobs and therefore make money. And there's a cycle involved that if you make money, you can buy more tools, and then those tools help you to make more money. And when you have that money, you can buy even better and faster tools that help you become more productive and efficient. So this way of operating has actually proved to be really problematic for me personally. As a woman now working in ministry rather than industry, and as a minister, success is actually defined by the depth of care and relationship that I can provide to others, especially the people I supervise. But these old ways die hard, and it's all too easy sometimes to see the technology that I use, even email and messaging, as a way that I can sort of ease the responsibility for good communication instead of slowing down to be really present with people where they are. I'm working on it. I think the biggest way that my economic story or understanding drives my reading of the Bible is that I tend to assume incorrectly that what people have is a result of their own efforts. And I've had to work to see more clearly that the economic story that the Bible portrays shows a God who gives gifts. Plants that come up from the ground, skills to create places for worship and celebration, bread and wine to sustain our spiritual lives. And God asks us as human beings to steward those gifts according to our calling. For example, when I think of Moses and God's call to go and deliver the Israelites, what tends to stand out to me is that God chooses him in spite of his lack of confidence. But the bigger picture of the story is that Pharaoh won't listen to Moses either way, and God is going to have to carry out the deliverance anyway, with Moses as even more of a witness than a primary agent of change. So, for the last question, I have learned that there's freedom in decentralizing my skills, hard work, or accomplishments from the bigger story of God's work of salvation and redemption in the world. Because of my economic story, one of the thought processes that I need to work to overcome every day is the idea that I am what I can accomplish. In the story of Job, who loses everything he had, all of his wealth and family, and essentially becomes impoverished, he says in his faith, "The Lord gives and the Lord takes away." That statement is very much at odds with some of the things that I learned in my economic story. But when I was in college, I was afforded the opportunity to put down my power tools for my dad and serve as a backpacking guide through the organization that I now work for. We spent all summer guiding trips through the Rocky Mountains, eating macaroni and cheese and peanut butter sandwiches. And still, when I look back on those days, I remember that I had the least money in my bank account, made the least money that I ever have in my life. And yet those were some of the richest and happiest days of my entire life. They rooted me in the truth that God is just and faithful in ways that are beyond what we can see and understand in our modern world. Thanks for letting me share.